The reign of Troy in the Pac-12 once again since the 2008 season. USC 9 years later recaptures the Pac-12 in a hard-fought and entertaining Pac-12 championship game over Stanford, 31-28. We bring in Don King from A Last Word on College Football. Hope to be joined by Nick Dempsey from Conquest Chronicles to give the USC slant. Don, what a game, as we talked about before we started to record. A number of small, minute plays that added up and changed the game. There were times that USC was this close to really breaking it open, but Stanford hung tight until that last onside kick and that last fourth down conversion.
Yeah, I got to say, Stanford showed a ton of heart all night, to some degree, all season. You know, start 1-2 and it looks like it's all over for you. You know, and then you go on the road and drop one at Pullman and it looks like it's all over for you again, and somehow hang in and beat 2 top 10 teams in 3 weeks and seal the North and knock off Notre Dame, and you know, kind of limped into Levi's Stadium, and you know, we're probably a little bit short of gas, a little bit short of the freshness needed to pull it out, but gave a valiant effort. You know, the Twitter coaches are already, you know, barking at Coach Shaw, but candidly, I have no beef with the call to go for it on fourth down. I think if he takes the field goal, certain people are going to be screaming at him for being his usual overly conservative self. You know, and if folks will remember, Shaw did the exact same thing against Cal to close that one out, and that 7.5-minute stretch included a fourth down conversion. And also against Notre Dame. You know, it was a little, particularly in those short yardage situations, that's been the hallmark of Stanford football since the Harbaugh era, prior to Shaw. And, you know, typically Stanford finds a way to get a yard, particularly if you got 2 cracks to get it. And this time they just didn't. Kudos to SC for making the play.
Don, as you started your wrap up there, you used the term limped into Levi's Stadium, and one guy that was limping all over the field, but it didn't it certainly mattered in regards to production, but he was still better than 90% of the backs in the country that could have been taking 22 carries for 125 yards. So can you in any way describe the effort there of Bryce Love? Wow.
The man is a warrior. My God, the kid's got a heart the size of Montana. Good for him. And it's been tough, but, you know, now he's finally going to get a few weeks to hopefully heal that thing properly before whichever bowl game. You know, I got to say, if Stanford had found a way to pull that one out, I would have been on here crowing, just give him the Heisman. You know, I'm sorry. What this kid has been through and fought through and overcome, went over 100 yards in this game for the 11th time this season. Now, here's what people are forgetting. He only played in 12 games. So there was only one game in which he played that he was held under 100 yards, including tonight. And for the last 6 weeks, he's now done it basically on 1.5 legs. It's really laudable. It's been incredibly impressive. It's been fun to watch him work. I fear, you know, this is going to be the end of the road for him in number 20 in Cardinal and White. If I'm him, I'm probably getting paid to do this next fall. But man, it's been a pleasure to watch this kid work all season long. And, you know, what a gutty performance once again.
Hey, Don, we're going to see 4 more conference championship games on Saturday, in particular in the Power 5, but other championship games as well. 2 teams coming into that setting with like circumstances and a like schedule coming into it. But in this one, Stanford not only has the disadvantage of USC in the bye week that the Trojans enjoy, but coming off the 6 days because the Friday championship game, and it showed to a certain extent on defense.
Yeah, particularly on the back end. I thought the DBs look a step slower, slightly less sure tackling, and not quite as good in coverage as they've been all year long. You know, Justin Reed led the Pac-12 in interceptions, and on that one long pass after they had been pinned down on the 3, he jumped too soon. He hasn't made that mistake one time all season. You know, he had perfect position. He had closed out. You know, got his head back around to the ball and just left his feet, you know, a little too early, and therefore couldn't get a hand on it, you know, to knock it away or possibly pick it off. So I do think that you know, the fatigue mattered, but again, just chalk it up to the game, right? You everybody has their crosses to bear. Stanford was in it to the end. I thought SC earned that win, and good for them.
Don King joining us from Last Word on College Football. Join him right there and the rest of the crew, Mike Laval, Tony Siracusa, and the rest of the staff as they cover college football and certainly contribute to Mark Rogers TV on a regular basis. We're talking up Stanford and USC with the Trojans winning the Pac-12 for the first time in 9 years, 31-28. KJ Costello completed just 10 passes, but they counted.
They did.
They were downfield. Caden
him
Smith,
and
JJ Arcega-Whiteside, those were the two guys that made the big plays.
Yeah, and he and his roommate connected twice for touchdowns. That long 42-yard bomb to Arcega-Whiteside on, and it was like 3rd and 20 or something crazy. I mean, that's what you're. It's easy to forget. I was like, oh, okay, looks like we're looking for a punt here, and he just floats it up and bang, sets up another goal to go situation. So KJ's got heart, played with a lot of moxie, was fighting through a thumb injury apparently on that last series. It didn't seem to hamper him except perhaps on that one bad snap, which he might have caught more cleanly had his hands both been completely healthy, but he was still able to sling it. His accuracy was pretty good when it needed to be.
A couple key plays by unsung heroes on the Stanford football team kept this close. So we talked about it before we started to record that there was a play in which USC was up 24-14 at the time, and John Houston munched KJ Costello between himself and a teammate. And it was the right call on the review that it was a forward pass, but hey, a split second earlier, and it would have been the right call to say, hey, this was a fumble. And right. USC would have been sitting with a 10-point lead at the Stanford 25-30-yard line. That was a key play. And then the Cardinal drove it down the field and got into the red zone. We're down around the 10, 15-yard line. Similarly, another strip sack by USC, and I think it was Nate Herbig jumped on it, and that preceded the touchdown pass to Smith that kept this game close. I like to highlight those guys that don't necessarily you can find in the box score or making the final play of the drive, but make the key plays to keep things going.
Couldn't agree more. Also, Daniel Marks on that fumble recovery by Love, who I thought Tessitore got it just right on the telecast. When you're that hobbled and in that much pain, God bless you for fighting through it, but something's going to suffer a little. I think his ball security declined just a bit versus what we're accustomed to seeing. Again, valiant effort, good football game, well coached, not necessarily well officiated, but that kind of is what it is. I think it was that. I think all of that stuff probably evened out on both sides as well. It was a good, entertaining college football game. Glad to watch it. Wish the other guys would have won, but tip of the hat to USC for being the first Pac-12 South team to actually win one of these championship games. Good for them.
Yeah, 6 straight for the North, mostly by Stanford, then Oregon, then Washington with the last one here in 2016, and USC finally breaks through as we would expect. I think anyone with a buck in their hand would lay it on the Trojans to finally break the streak for the Southern Division. Stanford, who knows what the bowl prospects are? I don't know if you've looked that far down the road, but maybe the Alamo, maybe the Holiday?
I think it's going to be the Holiday. So, Stanford, by virtue of tonight, finishes as the runner-up in the conference, but was tied with UW, who now has 2 fewer losses. So, by the rules, you can move up or down kind of one slot in your standings. The Alamo is the next best Pac-12 pairing. So unless Washington somehow slips into the New Year's Six, which I do not anticipate, I think you're going to see the Huskies go to San Antonio for the Alamo, and I expect Stanford to go to the Holiday Bowl in San Diego, to which it has never been. Stanford's never played there, which I think is another draw, and Stanford folks do tend to spend a lot of money on hotel rooms and restaurants and all that good stuff. So I think that'll, who's going to be real angry about going to San Diego the last week in December?
So the Pac-12 most likely left out of the college football playoffs, but certainly concluded its season in entertaining fashion, displaying its 2 top football programs. As we stand here in 2017, USC over Stanford 31-28. You would think USC would land in the top 10 in the final polls, and that Stanford, of course, the bowl game has yet to be played, but certainly shouldn't drop based on this loss to a top 10 team or a fringe top 10 team, right down to the wire. The Cardinal, despite not winning and maintaining its goal of winning a Pac-12 championship at the same time, you see where the program is. It's going to play for championships almost every year in the Pac-12 and possibly beyond. I would think that we will see an entry into the college football playoffs out of David Shaw's program sometime here in the next few years, I would guess.
Here's hoping.
Don King from Last Word on College Football. Nick Dempsey from Conquest Chronicles jumping on with us. Don, you can stick around if you'd like. If not,
sure. I'll hang out. How you doing, Nick?
Pretty good. How about yourself, Don?
Great, man.
All right, Nick, we're doing some live analysis here, so jump on in. You've got the winner's roll here. USC wins at 31-28. We certainly felt this team was the best team in the Pac-12 last year, but not given the opportunity, or did not earn the opportunity to showcase it in the championship game. But here they are winning their first Pac-12 in 9 years.
Yeah, this was a very odd game. USC was supposed to be the team that had problems with the deep passes, and yet Stanford was the one that gave up, 3 different passes for over 40 yards, another 19-yard and a 15-yard pass. So they got beat pretty deep. The USC defense once again held Bryce Love to a really bad day plus a good run.
Yeah. He still went for $125 on one.
Yeah, leg. But 52 of them are on, so that's what 21 rushes for 73 yards isn't.
That's been all season though. That's kind of who he's been.
Costello just sort of dropped off. He had a great night against Notre Dame, and then 10 for 22, and Love had an ankle injury, and Costello had a thumb situation, but I was really impressed. I think the biggest takeaway is not only the explosiveness of the USC offense, which they can do if they establish the run. The USC getting the running game going is the single biggest thing, single most important factor for Trojan success. If they can get the running game going, everything else just sort of opens up for them, and they can overcome a lot of the boneheaded penalties and the turnovers and the God knows whatever else they're doing. So they got the run going pretty well. It wasn't the most necessarily efficient, certainly wasn't as explosive as the 300 some odd yards they had last time around, but it was enough. And I think we are grossly underrating the USC defense inside their own 40.
I do agree with that.
Everybody, at least in Trojan land, was freaking out 2 weeks ago about how just bad this team looked against UCLA. Jordan Lastly had 200 some yards on maybe 10 catches or something like that, 3 touchdowns.
Who won that game, Nick?
Yeah, exactly. USC won. But there was this huge concern that the USC secondary had a problem with explosive plays on the deep pass. And statistically, that's true. They were one of the worst in terms of plays given up plus 20. But man, inside their own 40, I think
stepping up. That's right.
Coming into this game, I think they were the 5th best red zone defense.
I don't doubt it. They look great.
And
they make it hard.
Yeah, and they also played probably their cleanest game. Only 1 turnover. I say that pretty shocked. And none of them were from Sam Darnold.
That's true.
I think he's given the ball away more times than any other person that's playing college football this season.
Yeah, he's been bad in that aspect this year.
And he didn't. They had 1 turnover. Stanford couldn't capitalize.
Nope.
Then the terrible USC punt. Yeah, you start at the 33 and you can't score.
I know.
But again, USC took it away.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, we were talking about this before you jumped on. I do not begrudge the call to go for it.
No, not at all. I think it was absolutely the brilliant call. Had the jumbo package been stopped all season?
No, and we talked about this. Certainly not against Cal or Notre Dame. Same thing. made the same calls that made them work, and then you're a hero.
And guys, that sequence that we're talking about right now pulls together Nick's 2 points. Darnold following the red zone defense.
Yep.
The red zone defense, Nawasu is just. I
He's
expect to see
unbelievable.
him playing on Sundays and making impact plays on Sundays. He's an exceptional talent. They stop the Cardinal at the 1, and then Darnold makes the exceptional throw out of the end zone when he has all sorts of chaos going on around him and can't set his feet and still gets it out to Pittman.
Yep. Great play. And honestly, I think that was the ball game. You know, even more so than the fourth down stop. That play by Darnold, that was really the difference.
Because worst case scenario, you get stopped at the 1, they give another terrible punt, you just take the ball right back over at the USC, let's say 40. A lot of people are going to be very upset with the call to go for it on 4th down, but I want to go back to this. The jumbo package had literally not been stopped all season.
That is exactly right.
Jet Toner has, I believe, missed a field goal at some point.
Just a few, though.
So it's still a high percentage play to go for it, if I'm not mistaken.
I honestly have
scenario. They're at the 1-inch line. You get it right back. Try it again.
You got to stop them, right? And SC executed, and Stanford didn't get the stop. We kill Shaw for being too conservative. He wasn't there. I thought it was exactly the right call. It doesn't always work out.
And you can say, you know, maybe Scarlett was stopped, wasn't stopped, but that was the call. Darnold also had all season has had problems with his accuracy on throwing the ball basically more than 7 yards. He's been staring down receivers. He's been throwing into traffic. These were all sort of the basic mechanical things that have caused a lot of his problems, certainly on the interception front. And then today he was just like, I was just kidding, guys. And he just started dropping bombs left and right. And
he did. He played very well.
It's a little bit maddening because you're just like, well, where was this guy like at any point in the season except against Stanford and like Arizona State?
Yeah. John, I enjoyed in the broadcast that they highlighted this mammoth package that Stanford uses with the alternate center. I wrote down his name, Brian Chafin, coming in. I love to hear stuff like that. And, you know, that, again, it's Stanford doing something that nobody else is doing. It's just old school.
It's not new, by the way.
It's fun to watch.
It's not new. And honestly, it's caused problems before. You know, when Stanford missed the playoff in 2015, they were already using that same system. There were 2 different centers. And if you'll remember that Oregon game, the 2 fumbled snaps, they happened with each different center. And it was a little bit of the going back and forth. Each guy's a little bit different and may have played a factor there. They certainly cleaned that up because there were no issues with the exchanges. They've found a way to make that work. And by the way, this kid, the short yardage center, is supposed to be a bit of a savant as it comes to play calls and just understanding, you know, what everybody on the offensive line should do. Okay. He's kind of notorious for that. I think there was a package on that in one of the ESPN games. You know, and good for him. Glad to see him get his shine and get his name called out on national television. That was great.
Nick, how good is this USC team?
Which one?
Well, we could say that about just about anybody across the country, even the best.
But it's not the dichotomy is not nearly this extreme. Where, you know, one day one quarter they look like they could be beat by anyone, and then the next quarter they put up 20 points. This game statistically was very close. I mean, they had similar first downs, similar third down efficiencies.
Yep.
USC was just more explosive on their plays, and inside the 40 defense is just nuts. And I hate to say it, but I think that's probably the most underrated part of this team. I remember going back to the last offseason before 2016, the USC defensive line was woefully thin. They had a couple of like incoming freshmen that were exciting, but they were also like 18, and so they were going to need some time. And that was it scared everyone that's the weak spot. Stevie T transferred in, kind of shored them up a little bit, but he left, and then we didn't, USC didn't know what they're going to do, and now all of a sudden they're leading the conference, I think the country in sacks. Their havoc rate is nuts. Their run stuff rate is nuts. They're batting down passes. They got defensive ends getting interceptions. It's crazy, and it's just they went from this is where it's all going to fall apart to, well, this is why we're going to win now.
Hey, Nick, think about this. How many times did we talk in the preseason and then about a game or two into the season about Sam Darnold being locked in on Deontay Burnett? They win a Pac-12 championship game against Stanford. Darnold throws for 315, and Deontay Burnett has one catch for 9 yards.
Yeah. A very similar thing happened with Juju Smith-Schuster last year. It was, especially earlier in the year before Darnold kind of took over, it was, actually the last couple of years, it was first read Juju, second read Bale. And then, panic. And then all of a sudden, all these other young guys start showing up, or some of the older guys, and now all of a sudden he's like fourth or fifth in number of catches on each game towards the end. And
to the benefit of the offense.
Yes. To the point where it was actually one of the major reasons for that was Deontay Burnett showed up later in the season and just started catching everything. And so that he got to spread the ball out, and now Deontay Burnett's kind of like he had his shot at the top, and now we're going to Michael Pittman and the Immature Bebe brothers are getting in there. And although this was weird, this was a good day for Michael Pittman. He had the bulk of the receptions, so they're a little overloaded. He had 7 of the 17 receptions, but a nice bounce from everyone else on the 325 yards passing. But I look at these explosive plays that Stanford couldn't really compete with, and they got it they did just enough once again, USC, to win, even though there was plenty of opportunities for them to lose.
Don, Nick does anything he possibly can to get in the name Immature Bebe.
Yeah, it's a fun name. I would do exactly the same. I don't hate him for that. I think it's one of the all-time great college football names.
I spent a lot of time practicing it so that I didn't butcher it, and now that I've got it, I'm like, I'm going to use this.
You need to
get in there.
There are more coming, right? Aren't there going to be a couple more coming? No, I don't.
Well, they're going to be around for a while. The older brother, the tight end, is a sophomore. The younger brother, wide receiver, I believe, is a freshman. So
when it says Bebe at the end of the name, you expect more to be coming.
Fair point. Fair point.
I also, when USC went forward on that fourth down to ice the game, I'm not gonna lie, I was incredibly nervous because I thought, oh man, they're about to throw a pick six. Stanford's gonna win because someone, because so many times throughout the season they're just like, well, let's let Sam make a decision, and he is a 21, 22-year-old kid. Sometimes he's going to do some things that aren't the smartest in the world, and there's no Juju Smith-Schuster to bail him out.
I don't think there was much of a decision there. I think there was one guy.
Right, but even when it is an easy decision, he still sometimes misses it. So I thought, oh my God, this is how this is going to go down. He's going to somehow it's going to bounce off somebody. It's going to be a pick six, and it'll be like the most Pac-12 ending ever.
Well, if the rumors are true, Nick, the Cleveland Browns continue to lose every game imaginable for the rest of their history, and Sam Darnold can't risk playing for that horrible franchise, and he stays at USC. That's what people are saying.
I think he should stay in school, but not to avoid the Browns. Because honestly, they're probably going to get the first pick next year too. So there's no point in staying just for that. But I think he has a lot of mechanical issues, like fundamental issues that he needs to work through. And he better work through them pretty quick if he's going to the NFL now, because if you're staring down receivers and throwing into triple coverage, I don't know. It
doesn't work real well on Sundays.
Yeah. And I don't know if there's any wide receiver out there that's so hyper dominant that he'll come up with those catches. I think that's probably an interception every time. So I don't know, but then again, he's going to it's a pretty fat paycheck staring him in the face. So
yeah, he'll be all right.
Yeah, he'll probably be fine. But I think he's got to work through some of those issues. And he has improved. But again, I don't think USC has had a good offensive day. Sam Darnold in particularly hasn't had a good day without the running game rolling since the Rose Bowl. I think was the last time Darnold just looked sharp on his own. And he absolutely did take that game over in the fourth quarter, especially. And the running game was absolutely shut down. But since then, it's, if USC can't establish the running game, USC's or Sam Darnold in the passing attack has been very shaky and inconsistent. And certainly the Browns or anyone picking in the top 5 is probably not going to have a dominant running game, I'm guessing. But
fair guess.
He's got some things to work on, and he'll be fine, I think. But I think he could use another year.
Hey, Don, you used the term savant a few minutes ago. How about Harrison Phillips? You could use the term for him as well.
He's just a full-grown man. That dude.
But they were talking about what he accomplishes on campus.
Off the field, too, yeah. But he's just country strong. You heard them talk about his wrestling prowess in high school, and, you just can't stop him. Your nose tackle is not supposed to be your leading tackler. It's just not supposed to happen like that. He gets double-teamed on every play and still makes plays. The kid is just unreal.
Yeah,
he's gonna be a really, really good get for somebody on an NFL roster next year. He's already got the build, he's got the body, he's got the smarts. He diagnoses and reads plays really, really well. That kid is a stud. And I've said this before to you, Mark. I think folks underestimated how critical he was to letting Solomon Thomas be Solomon Thomas last year. I think a lot of folks overlooked that. He's eating up 2 and 3 blockers in the interior, and Thomas was free to just roam and wreak havoc. And this year without Thomas, now it's just more obvious. He's equally dominant, but now he's getting the tackles himself.
Let's let folks know that we've got Don King from Last Word on College Football. We've got several people watching us. So Don King, Last Word on College Football, you got to join him there and the rest of the staff for college football coverage as we approach championship weekend, and we're in the midst of it already. Nick Dempsey from Conquest Chronicles breaking down USC football for us. And I'm merely Mark Rogers, Mark Rogers TV. But if you love college football, you got to join me here because I have these guys and a whole bunch more on a regular basis to talk up college football. USC over Stanford, first Trojan Pac-12 championship since 2008. They get it done in entertaining fashion, 31-28. Anything else that you guys would like to jump in on? What are we going to see? USC, maybe Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl? I've seen that projection.
I think that's going to happen.
I would love to see that. We'll call it the Jekyll and Hyde Bowl. And
yeah, for both teams. I do think that happens. By the way, I think OSU wins tomorrow. I do not think they make the playoff. And I think they wind up going to Phoenix and playing SC.
Can I just take a second? This Caden Smith guy, the tight end.
He's terrific. Wow.
He is the proud of Flower Mound, Texas.
He's terrific.
He's come out of nowhere and apparently constantly lobbying his roommate to throw him the ball more.
I got to tell you, you see that 82 and you flash back to Zach Ertz, wearing that same number, playing that same kind of role. He's got that good speed across the middle. He's got the big body, the huge catch radius, and some fantastic hands. Kid's a baller, man. The tight end room is loaded this year at Stanford.
He has had, in the last 3 games, a total of 10 receptions. And I think, 5 of them are touchdowns?
That sounds about right. I can think of 3 off the top of my head just from tonight and last week.
So he had 2 tonight, right? 2 tonight, 1 against, 4 of the 10 in the last 3 games. And
one of the other ones was that 26-yard first down tonight to set up that final touchdown. Yeah, kid's a stud.
Yeah, 40% of his touches are for 6 points. Just saying, not bad. Maybe throw to him more. Just a thought.
Perhaps.
But yeah, it's it was a wild game. It seemed like there was opportunities for both teams that could have taken it over, and it's just like someone made a critical play at the right point, or somebody collapsed at the right point. But I think when we look back, we're gonna stop hating on Clancy Pendergrass and his scheme so much, and look back at
it is time to stop killing him. I mean, he's been in the game a long time. He's had some high-profile failures, so to speak. But on the other hand, he's done some really phenomenal coaching jobs in more than one place, I think this season included.
I've got an offbeat question for you guys concerning the Pac-12, because the Pac-12 gets highlighted here on a Friday night. Everybody else plays from the Power 5 on Saturday. We know what the likeliness of the Pac-12 getting to the college football playoff, and there's obviously no connection there. But do you guys think it's a good thing for the Pac-12 to be playing these Friday night championship games?
I think it's a good thing as long as the two teams playing it are on an equal footing from a schedule standpoint.
Yeah,
I think they need to do a little bit better job on the scheduling in general. They set up USC on that trip to Pullman, right, on a short week and on the road.
Back-to-back road games.
Did the same thing to Washington at Stanford on the road on a 6-day turnaround, and now you got Stanford playing on a 6-day turnaround against a team that's been off for 13 days. They've got to normalize that thing. But honestly, having Friday night all to itself, I think, is great for the Pac-12 conference. They just got to think through how they schedule everything, not just at the end of the year, but throughout. They've got some equity issues, I think, from a scheduling standpoint, and it doesn't help.
Yeah, so basically they're making it difficult for their most likely contenders for the playoff to get there, number one, to your point. Number two, to your positive point, in addition to the championship format that we've seen for the 6 years, always playing on a Friday night, there are more Thursday and Friday night Pac-12 games than the other four conferences put together.
I think that's right. That's just a cash grab. And and sometimes to the detriment of like you said, it's particularly at the top of the conference, because those are the teams people want to see, and you're kind of setting them up a little bit.
I would like to see just the conference championship game be Friday night, and then ditch the weeknight games during the season for a bunch of reasons.
You gotta walk away from that money, but it would suit me.
Well, if the Pac-12 network would get their stuff together and
that's a whole nother show.
Yeah,
but Nick, that is a whole nother show.
But
you guys are the Pac-12 guys. I would think that you would be thinking, as I am right now, I love those Thursday and Friday late games.
They're great to watch, but they're terrible for the players.
On Saturday, that enables people to get more comfortable and more familiar with some Pac-12 football.
It's great for viewership, provided, pertinent people are actually watching, like, say, Heisman voters. But it's terrible. Like, you can't come out here and say we're going to spend $15 million on a study for player safety, because that's definitely our emphasis. And then we're going to make you play 2 road games in 6 days, or go 12 straight games without a break. Or I believe Stanford had 11 straight a year or two ago. Right. You can't have them, out there playing these 8 p.m. Pacific start times. And then they get back on Sunday morning, and then 4 days later, they're back on the road. It's great for viewership. It's probably good for money, and it's great for us we get to watch more football. But you just can't sit there and tell me you're concerned about player safety when you're then putting them in the most unsafe positions you can.
Player safety and student athletes.
Yeah.
So let's not pay them, but let's milk them for all we can.
And let's also put them in a schedule where they can't really go to most of their classes sometimes, because
you guys are just highlighting my self-centeredness. I was just thinking about myself watching more football.
And I completely agree with you. I love it.
I'm with you on that.
It's very hypocritical, I think, of the conference, and it isn't helping them necessarily with the playoff committee or Heisman voters. It's just sort of cannibalizing themselves. USC picked up their first loss because of the Friday night games. Washington, like Don said, I believe David Shaw at a press conference said, I think the road team on Friday night games has a horrible record. It's very close to zero.
It's not good.
So at that point, it's just like, well, why bother playing if you already know this team's going to come in, with the gas tank half empty before you even kick off?
You just give those road assignments to Colorado and Oregon State and Cal.
Yeah, that's what that works if you know who's going to be bad, but the converse is the money's not as good if nobody's watching. So,
well, they should pick them every week, like the bottom team. Like, okay, you're 0-3. All right, you get the Friday night game. Congratulations. But then there's also sort of another practical problem.
Oregon State's playing nothing but Friday night games, is what you're telling me.
Well, they're about as good as a high school football team, so it makes sense.
That's funny.
But there's also a practical problem. You got two teams in LA. You got one team in San Jose, San Francisco. You got a team in Seattle. There's Salt Lake City, and you're trying to put these games on a work night, Thursday or Friday night at 5 p.m. And you got to get through rush hour traffic. I remember USC, one of their first Thursday night games, people were livid. One, because they couldn't tailgate all day, which I get. That's okay. But the stadium was empty till about halftime because LA traffic, like you get off at 5:30, you're not getting there till 8. And at that point, the game is probably already over. So why bother? Let's just go to the bar.
Yeah.
And so, it's probably worse in LA, but you got San Francisco, Bay Area, you got Seattle, you got Salt Lake City.
Yeah, San Francisco's the Bay Area is not a walk in the park either.
Yeah.
That was not a very well attended game this evening, for instance.
No, it was not. But it's it's also not a good look. Yeah, you might be on national TV and everyone's watching, but there's 10,000 people in the stadium that should be holding 80 plus.
In fairness to the Pac-12 watch, there might be an exception with the ACC tomorrow night, but typically the ACC is pretty much in the same boat. They have some sparse crowds it's pretty much the SEC and now the Big Ten. We'll be interested to see the Big 12, how many turnout for the Big 12, although TCU is going to be very close, but there's not a whole lot of turnout from that school.
Yeah, the ACC does struggle. You're right. Those games in Charlotte tend to be sparsely attended.
This one's been sold out for 3 weeks, though. I thought I heard.
It's the NCAA first round basketball effect. They're but
the benefit this year is, you got number 1 and number 7 in Miami, and particularly Miami hasn't been there in a long time, so they're probably a little bit fired up to go check it out. So this may be an exception. Been there. Yeah, so they haven't won since the last conference title was the Big East. I think I saw earlier today. That's funny, right?
Wow.
It's a basketball conference.
Yeah,
now.
the all basketball conference. Nice. But speaking of, you brought up the Big 12 championship game. I really hope TCU wins tomorrow and just screws it up for the Big 12 again.
They won't.
We're talking about
don't ruin my dream, Don. Don't ruin my dream.
Nick, I'm just trying to serve you a little bit of reality.
I've been pulling for Auburn for 3 weeks now for chaos, and they actually are pretty close to pulling it off. TCU's following right behind them. Don't rain on my parade.
Okay.
You guys talk about TV schedules and locales and logistics, showing us what is the priority for particular conferences. The scheduling of the Big 12 championship game tomorrow tells us what TV thinks of the Big 12 versus the other conferences. They're playing at 11:30 a.m. local time.
I know.
Because the Big 10 is going to be in prime time, and they don't want to mess around opposite the SEC at 4 o'clock.
That's right.
So the Big 12 is playing at 11:30 local time.
That's right.
Get those boys out of bed early. Get them
The only reason they added that was to try to improve their chances to make the CFP. They were just trying to.
That's exactly why I want TCU to blow it for them.
Yeah, I hear you.
They'd be a lot,
and it may happen.
Yeah, they would have Notre Dame their way right in there with Oklahoma, and now I want TCU to just botch it for them.
Okay, you may get your wish, my friend.
Pac-12 champions, USC Trojans, Sam Darnold probably off to the pros after his postseason game But we shall see, and we always will keep you up to date with the likes of Nick Dempsey from Conquest Chronicles, and of course Don King from Last Word on College Football, joining us after the USC win over Stanford. Very entertaining game, very intriguing. 31-28. The South finally wins one in the Pac-12 championship game after 6 consecutive losses to Oregon, Stanford, and Washington. All right, gentlemen, I think we've done enough damage. I appreciate you jumping on board.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mark.
Of course, Mark, anytime.